What if I told you that a city overflowing with beauty, luxury, and prosperity vanished in a single morning? They had everything: fertile land, abundant wealth, freedom to indulge every desire. Travelers compared the valley of the Jordan to the garden of the Lord itself. To live in Sodom or Gomorrah was to live in abundance. But beneath the glittering surface, something darker pulsed. These were cities without fear of God. They rejected righteousness, mocked justice, and forgot compassion. Arrogance was their crown, cruelty their trade. They delighted in sin, and they called it freedom. Their streets echoed not with worship, but with violence, mockery, and lust. The poor were neglected, the stranger rejected, the defenseless crushed. The prophet Ezekiel would later describe them with haunting words. Now this was the sin of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters were arrogant, overfed, and unconcerned. They did not help the poor and needy. They were haughty and did detestable things before me. Therefore, I did away with them, as you have seen. This is not just the story of two cities, it is a warning carved in fire. And heaven was listening. The cries of the oppressed, the pain of the innocent, the weight of injustice rose like smoke into the courts of God. And the Lord came down to see for himself. It was a hot afternoon when Abraham sat by the entrance of his tent, near the oak groves of Mamre. He lifted his eyes and saw 3 men standing nearby. But these were no ordinary men. One was the Lord himself, veiled in human form. The other 2 were angels, messengers of judgment. Something in Abraham's spirit recognized them. He rose quickly, bowed low, and offered water, rest, and food. A feast was set before them: fresh bread, curds, milk, and a choice calf. Abraham stood by as they ate, serving with honor, knowing instinctively this was no ordinary encounter. Then came the words that made his heart heavy. The outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah is great. Their sin is very grievous. I will go down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has reached me. The angels rose and walked toward the doomed cities. But Abraham stood before the Lord, and in one of the boldest prayers ever uttered, he dared to plead with God. Will you sweep away the righteous with the wicked? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Will you destroy it? And the Lord replied, If I find 50 righteous in Sodom, I will spare the whole place for their sake. But Abraham pressed further. 45, 40, 30, 20. Each time the Lord's answer was the same. For the sake of the few, he would withhold judgment. Finally, trembling, Abraham asked one last time, What if only 10 are found there? And the Lord answered, For the sake of 10, I will not destroy it. Abraham could go no further. He returned to his tent, heart heavy with hope and dread. Would there even be 10? As the sun set, the 2 angels approached Sodom. At the gate sat Lot, Abraham's nephew. Years before, he had chosen to live in Sodom, drawn by its wealth and fertile plains. But what he found was not prosperity, it was corruption. Still, he stayed, perhaps too entangled to leave. When Lot saw the strangers, he rose and bowed low. My lords, please come to your servant's house and spend the night. Wash your feet, and rise early to continue your journey. The angels replied, No, we will spend the night in the square. But Lot insisted urgently. He knew the danger. He knew what the streets of Sodom became after dark. And so they entered his home, where he prepared a feast for them. But before they could rest, a terrible sound arose. From every corner of the city men came, young and old, until the house was surrounded. They beat on the door, shouting, Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, so that we may know them. Their words were not of hospitality but of violence, a euphemism for unspeakable abuse. The city's corruption now stood bare, its depravity unmasked. Lot rushed outside, shutting the door behind him. "Please, my brothers," he begged, "do not do this wicked thing." But then, in a moment that still chills the soul, Lot made a desperate and tragic offer. "I have 2 daughters who have never known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and you can do as you please with them. But do nothing to these men, for they are under my roof." The offer was horrifying, a twisted reflection of a man shaped by Sodom's culture. Even in trying to protect his guests, Lot revealed how deeply the city's corruption had seeped into him. But the mob only grew more enraged. "Out of our way!" they shouted. "This foreigner came here, and now he acts like a judge. We will treat you worse than them." They surged forward to break down the door, and then the strangers revealed who they were. Reaching out, they pulled Lot back into the house and struck the mob with sudden blindness. Panic filled the streets. The men stumbled, groping, unable to find the door. The angels turned to Lot. "Do you have anyone else here? Sons-in-law, sons, daughters, anyone in the city who belongs to you? Get them out, for we are going to destroy this place. The outcry to the Lord is so great, he has sent us to destroy it." Lot hurried to warn his sons-in-law. The men pledged to marry his daughters. "Hurry, leave this place. The Lord is about to destroy the city." But they laughed, dismissing him as a fool. To them, judgment was a joke. At dawn, the angels urged Lot again. "Hurry, take your wife and your daughters, or you will be swept away." But Lot lingered. Was it fear? Was it love of home? Was it doubt? The text does not say. But still, he hesitated. And so, in an act of sheer mercy, the angels seized them by the hands, Lot, his wife, and his daughters, and dragged them out of the city. "Run for your lives," they commanded. "Do not look back. Flee to the mountains, or you will be destroyed." But Lot pleaded, "Please, my lord, I cannot flee to the mountains. Disaster will overtake me. Let me escape to that small town over there. It is small, is it not?" The angel agreed. "Very well, I will not overthrow the town you speak of. But hurry, I can do nothing until you reach it." The town was called Zoar, meaning small. Just as the sun rose, Lot and his family fled toward Zoar. And then it happened. The Lord rained down fire and burning sulfur from heaven, not just on Sodom, but on Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, the whole valley. The sky turned red, the earth trembled, fields erupted in flame. The laughter of the night turned into screams of terror. Buildings collapsed, livestock perished, rivers boiled. The garden of the Lord became a furnace of judgment. But as they fled, Lot's wife looked back. Her heart, still tied to what she left behind, betrayed her steps. And in that moment, she was turned into a pillar of salt, frozen in longing for a city that no longer existed. Lot reached Zoar with his daughters, but he was afraid to stay. He fled again, this time into the mountains, dwelling in a cave, a man who had lost everything. And there, another sorrow unfolded. Believing no man would come to them, Lot's daughters, shaped by the corruption of Sodom, made their father drunk and bore children by him. The sons born of that cave would become the Moabites and the Ammonites, nations that later opposed Israel. Even in survival, the shadow of Sodom lingered. The destruction of Sodom and Gomorrah echoed through generations. The prophets invoked it as a warning. Jesus himself spoke of it. it will be more bearable on the day of judgment for Sodom than for that town. What was their sin? Wealth without compassion, freedom without restraint, pride without humility, desire without boundaries. They oppressed the poor, mocked the stranger, delighted in perversion, and called it progress. And make no mistake, judgment did not come swiftly. God warned. He watched. He waited. But when mercy was exhausted, when even 10 righteous could not be found, fire fell. Yet, even in the fire, there was mercy. Lot was spared, not because of his righteousness, but because God remembered Abraham. Intercession delayed destruction until the innocent were removed. This is not just a story of judgment. It is also a story of mercy. God's patience is long, but it is not endless. His justice is certain, but his heart is to save. And what of us today? We live in cities filled with wealth and wonder, yet pulsing with arrogance and corruption. Many societies now mirror Sodom, exalting perversion as freedom, mocking faith as weakness, silencing those who stand for truth. Luxury thrives while the poor are forgotten. Violence parades as entertainment. Blasphemy is called boldness. And many live as if judgment will never come. But the story of Sodom whispers across the centuries. Do not be deceived. The wide road leads to destruction. The crowd does not lead to life. Jesus said, "Enter through the narrow gate. For wide is the gate and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. But small is the gate and narrow the road that leads to life, and only a few find it." The fire that fell on Sodom was not just punishment. It was a plea, a warning carved in flame. Turn back while there is time. In a world chasing shadows, Jesus remains the solid rock, the true hope, and the way to life. Stand firm, even when it feels uncool, even when the crowd mocks, even when the narrow road feels lonely. For the God who judged Sodom is the same God who offers mercy today. The fire was real. The destruction was total. But so was the mercy for those who listened. The story of Sodom and Gomorrah is not just about what was lost. It is about what can still be gained. For anyone who chooses the narrow path, who resists the crowd, who clings to the God who saves.